Welcome to This Explainer. Let's just jump right in, because today we are diving into a truly fascinating analysis of how Bruce Springsteen's music basically acts as a Trojan horse. You know, if you've ever found yourself singing along to one of his massive, stadium-rocking anthems, you might actually be pretty surprised to learn what's hiding inside them. According to the research we're exploring today, Springsteen has spent decades weaving these incredibly deep, class-conscious critiques of American military service right into the beating heart of pop culture. So we're going to unpack exactly how he does it.
Okay, just think about this 1984 album cover for a second. It creates this massive cognitive dissonance. I mean, it's easily one of the most famous images in rock history, right? And it's widely viewed as a super straightforward patriotic celebration. You've got the flag, the blue jeans, the classic white t-shirt. But the sources point out that this image is actually loaded with subversive contradictions that challenge that very patriotism.
Let's actually break down these visuals because it's kind of like a giant puzzle. First off, the outfit isn't just casual. It's a strict blue-collar uniform, heavily signaling his allegiance to the working class. Then, you've got that red hanky tucked into the back pocket, which in the 1980s was actually a well-known code signaling LGBT solidarity. That was a hugely provocative statement for a mainstream rocker to make at the time. And finally, look at the posture. He's facing away, and the framing almost suggests he's, well, urinating on the flag. These details, our sources argue, are clear hints from Springsteen that this is absolutely not your typical blindly patriotic record.
All right, moving into Section 1, the misunderstood anthem. Stripping away the stadium rock to reveal the tragic narrative.
To really understand the depth of his critique, we absolutely have to start with the title track itself. Born in the USA is for sure one of the most misunderstood songs in American history. Despite politicians, including Ronald Reagan, trying to claim it on the campaign trail as this upbeat, feel-good anthem, the source material clarifies that the song's protagonist isn't celebrating at all. He is actually a veteran trapped in a desperate, totally inescapable situation.
And this lays out the tragic arc of that character perfectly. It's a brutal cycle. First, he gets caught in a hometown jam, likely a minor crime like petty theft. Because of his social class, the system offers him a stark choice: go to jail or join the army. So he chooses the army, goes off to Vietnam, and risks his life. But when he returns, he's completely denied support from the Veterans Administration. The song literally ends with him right back where he started, standing in the shadow of the penitentiary. It's just a devastating cycle of exploitation and abandonment.
Which brings us to Section 2, Class and the Draft, a system rigged by chance and circumstance. If you look at these two realities side by side, the systemic inequality of that era hits you right away. As sociologists and historians point out, middle-class men had loopholes. They could get college deferments, secure doctor's notes through family connections, or land safe appointments in the National Guard. Working-class men just didn't have those networks. For them, the military was viewed as this inescapable fate or simply a desperate alternative to staying in a deindustrialized hometown with zero jobs. So, the really interesting question here is, considering this highly rigged system and his own blue-collar background in Freehold, New Jersey, how did Springsteen himself manage to narrowly escape the draft? It's a wild story, actually. During his 1968 induction physical, Springsteen was terrified. And partly, that was because his father actually wanted the Army to make a man out of his long-haired son. Now, while Springsteen did have some lingering injuries from a pretty bad motorcycle accident, he also engaged in this crazy act of teenage rebellion. He went in and checked every single box on his induction form, including the one asking if he was gay. He basically used the very few tools he had available to manipulate the system, and it worked. He failed the physical. But that profound feeling of absolute powerlessness forever shaped his worldview. Let's move on to Section 3, the working class trap. Desperation masquerading as duty. You see, this wasn't just some abstract theory for Springsteen. It was incredibly personal. Take Bart Haynes, for example. He was the drummer in Springsteen's very first band, the Castiles. Haynes ended up enlisting in the Marines, but not out of some grand sense of American foreign policy. He did it simply to control the timing of a draft notice he knew was eventually coming anyway. Tragically, he died in combat in 1967. As Springsteen has pointed out, Haynes didn't even know where Vietnam was on a map. This tragic, real-life story completely grounds all that sociological data we were just looking at. And as you can see here, Springsteen's military characters span multiple eras, constantly showing individuals trapped by the caprice of their social class, whether it's Frank in the 60s serving while his brother gets a farm deferment, or a lieutenant in the 90s dealing with the heavy psychological toll of the Gulf War, or a soldier in 2005 wrestling with the moral vacuum of the Iraq War, the theme is totally consistent. They are all moved by circumstances far beyond their control.
And that leads us to Section 4, the tragedy of abandonment. The real critique is how America treats its returned veterans.
To really grasp this, we have to talk about Springsteen's concept of meanness. He uses this specific term to describe the dark side of the American experience. You'll notice his anger in these songs is almost never directed at the soldiers themselves. Instead, it is aimed squarely at the systemic meanness of a society that happily uses its working-class citizens for labor or war and then completely unceremoniously discards them once their sacrifice is no longer needed.
A great example is his 1995 song Youngstown, where he draws a direct, really bitter parallel between economic and military exploitation. He sings about a town that literally built the tanks and bombs that won America's wars, only to have its factories abruptly shut down. He's equating the economic abandonment of these deindustrialized factory towns directly with the societal abandonment of the veterans who lived there. It's a powerful connection.
And as the years go by, the source material notes his work gets even more explicit. Take the 2014 song The Wall. It's this intensely angry, class-conscious indictment. He directly calls out the politicians who sent working-class kids to die while they eat safely in rich dining halls. He even specifically targets former Defense Secretary Robert McNamara. He flatly rejects McNamara's 1996 public apology for the Vietnam War, singing that apology and forgiveness have no place here at all. He pulls no punches.
He also uses history to critique the present. During the absolute height of the Iraq War in 2007, Springsteen released a song called Last to Die. He revived this famous 1971 quote from John Kerry's testimony about Vietnam. By pulling this historical testimony into the modern era, Springsteen is highlighting a recurring cycle, the way civilians and politicians safely distance themselves from the catastrophic mistakes they force soldiers to fight and die for.
But, and this is a super vital distinction in the research, Springsteen perfectly separates the policy from the person. Even while he was vehemently protesting the Iraq War, he frequently performed at Stand Up for Heroes benefits for wounded veterans. He proves that you can be entirely opposed to a nation's military interventions while still fiercely fighting for the men and women who were victimized by that very system.
There's this quote from a 1981 benefit concert that just perfectly sums up his heartbreak over all of this. He compares society's treatment of struggling veterans to seeing someone getting hurt in a dark alley, but just keeping your head down and walking on. It's a beautifully stated, but incredibly powerful condemnation of our societal apathy.
So as we wrap up this explainer, we really have to ask ourselves a fundamental question. Springsteen always says his life's work is judging the distance between the American dream and the American reality. So, the next time we're all listening to one of those massive stadium anthems, are we finally hearing the cry of the abandoned working class? Or are we still just walking on by?